back to our 16th episode of the Launcher Farm Show, where I interview Andrew Fogliato with Just Sell Homes. Today, Andrew and I discuss how he went from selling homes and not really loving it, to helping agents in his brokerage, to speaking and training all over North America, and helping agents run their online marketing systems, and helping them crush it with online ads. In this episode, Andrew and I talk about why trying to game the system with social media and Google is going to hurt you in the long run. Andrew also shares how to create content that will work consistently and bring you in leads time and time again without annoying your audience. We also talk about what you can do to shift your business to adding online marketing strategies that complement your offline marketing. Andrew shares a super easy way to leverage your online relationships to find your ideal clients offline. Andrew talks about how to niche down your database to provide the right content to the right people at the right time. Plus, we share a ton of other ideas and strategies that you can put into your business using online marketing and to help grow your online presence. So enjoy this episode, be sure to like and subscribe, and enjoy the interview with Andrew. Welcome back to another episode of the Launcher Farm Show. I'm your host, Ryan Smith, and today we've got a great guest. It's Andrew Fogliato from Just Sell Homes. So Andrew, take a second, tell us a bit about yourself and a bit about your business.
Sure. Thanks for having me on. So I'm Andrew Fogliato. So I was an agent. I sold actively for 2 years in the nice little town of Aurora. Did that, and I tried everything. Like I was door knocking, cold calling, all that stuff. I actually got a deal on the second house I ever door knocked on.
That's awesome. Unlikely, but good.
Well, at the time, I'm like, oh, I'm going to kill this business. I got like a 50% conversion rate on doors. Like, I'm going to make this thing rain. That was almost the last deal I ever got door knocking. It was not my strength. Cold call arguably went worse. But I was blogging minimum 3 times a week, sometimes up to 5. I ended up getting a column in the newspaper, and then I started pairing Facebook ads with it. And that's where a lot came from, that, and then like relationships. And actually my first like true listing that like no referral or anything like that from it came from Kijiji. So I got it off there, which was an interesting one. But then I started like training my brokerage. So like my broker came to my open house one time and was like, I had this thing where I was like, I can't read people's writing. That chicken scratch. So I just looked up an app that they could sign in on my iPad. So now you'd probably know as Open Home Pro.
Yep.
But at the time, like no one knew about it because it was brand new. He came in and he's like, can you train the office on this? I was like, sure. He booked a 2-hour session. If you know Open Home Pro, that's a 10 to 15 minute max session. Yeah. So it just kind of turned into me teaching them how to do a bunch of stuff. Long story short there, I ended up getting recruited by one of the brands to come and train their agents across North America. So I ended up selling for 2 years and then jumping into training, traveling North America, speaking on stages, stuff like that. The benefit of that is it positioned me as the expert at marketing and tech and tools and all that. So then I ended up, every time I trained, people were like, can I hire you to do it for me? So I was like, eventually I honestly didn't actually love selling houses as much. Like I liked people, I liked dealing with other agents. Actually, I loved the marketing side of it, but like evenings and weekends showing homes I didn't love. So when everyone kept asking me to hire them, I was like, I would actually rather do that.
Yeah.
And then funny, actually, on my first day in real estate, the guy who ended up becoming my mentor goes, Andrew, I'm gonna give you the secret to getting rich in real estate. Just sell something to real estate agents.
Yeah.
So
very true.
I took that very much to heart.
Yeah.
And then, so I ended up jumping in and doing Just Sell Homes, which were a marketing agency for the industry. I mean, we mostly specialize in Facebook ads. Like that's kind of our bread and butter.
Yep.
We have clients that if it's digital, we'll do it for them. So like we have blogging stuff. We do email marketing. We do some websites, but that's like higher end custom websites where we're not going to be build you a template and put you out there the same as everyone else. So we don't do a ton of websites because that's not a focus of ours, but we do them the odd time here and there. If it's digital, we'll do it.
That's awesome. And I think the key, like you said, is in your name. It's Just Sell Homes. And I know you positioned it as that it's let the agent go do what they're doing best, which is going and selling homes, and you're helping them behind the scenes. So for you, obviously you saw a need, because I find that there's a lot of agents who are successful. They do well at selling homes, but they suck at marketing. They suck at online. They're just not interested. And how did that translate for you to get that started, and what did it look like at the beginning when you got launched helping agents?
I mean, at the beginning, I didn't look at all the different ways and approaches you could take. I just kind of made it up as I went. So my first couple of clients were guinea pigs. Still have some of them, so it worked out.
That's good.
But it was a lot of just kind of figuring out. And back then, like, I couldn't build a website. I didn't know how to do that, but I knew marketing. But my biggest challenge back then was actually agents' websites were so bad that they couldn't convert traffic I was sending. So I remember I had one client, I got down to like 6 cents a click.
Wow.
And so like we were sending thousands of people to a site, and that's the only numbers I could see because I didn't have access to their back end.
Yeah.
Because they were very private. And I had another client in the area, so they were worried about that. So I couldn't see their back end. So for me, all I saw was thousands of people a month going to their website. Turns out their website was so bad they didn't convert a single one. So for them, they were like, to them, I thought it was going great.
Yeah.
Because they were, sometimes if you work, some people don't give you a lot of feedback, other people give you a ton of it, but they didn't give me a lot of feedback. So I thought it was going great because the numbers on my end could not have been better.
Yeah.
Like, maybe the only way I could have made it better is if I added a puppy to the ads. But the numbers were great, but they weren't getting any leads. So eventually I had to start figuring out and doing way more into like, okay, assume their website won't do anything. How can I adjust? And that's when we got into like, first it was custom built landing pages for each campaign.
Yeah.
Then we really dove into Facebook lead ads. We didn't dive in at the beginning. When Facebook lead ads first came out, they were actually terrible.
Yes. Yeah, I remember.
We started that, and like, I think I did a couple, I maybe spent like about $1,000 testing, and the numbers on landing pages were significantly better.
Yeah.
So I put them on the shelf for about 2 years. And then I was talking to a couple people at a marketing event I was at, and they were saying that they had just relaunched lead ads for their business about 6 months before and were getting really good results. So we switched, tested it out again. And what we found out was we could basically get leads under $1 a lot of the time, leveraging listings. These aren't the highest quality leads, but volume wise, you can pump it out pretty good.
Yep. So
we kind of introduced that, and that you basically let us turn on the tap on and off. It's like basically how many leads do you want?
Yeah.
And then we just kind of built out other systems from there and then expanded. Because like every time we started doing something, be like, okay, could you also do this? Could you also do this? Funny enough, I actually originally offered before paid organic social was my first thing, my first offering. And I remember we picked up a really big client doing like 400 or 500 deals a year, paying us like $4,000 a month to do their organic. And we were going to launch like an Ask Gary V style show for them, like do a full organic push. That was in August. September was when Facebook launched the big algorithm change that killed all organic reach on social media. So we had about a 3-week run where we killed the numbers that they had before us, and then right off the cliff. So he was a client for about another 2 months. Because it really did not work out, and it took us a while to kind of adjust on the organic side. Then we actually just stopped doing organic for a while for clients. We advised people how to do it, consulting with them on how they should do it. And only I'd say in the past about a year, we started taking organic back on. Because now we have a plan we're happy with, where like we're happy with the results and what we'll go out under our name.
But I think it's critical to the points that you're making is that things shift and things change, especially with online. And the principles are still going to be the same, and of how you capture someone's attention and things like that. But how you get in front of the people and how you drive traffic changes so quickly. And for a lot of agents, they're not on top of that. They're too busy selling homes. What advice can you give to agents to keep on top of that? If they're not hiring someone like you, like how do they know what's going on? Because I've seen agents who are just completely out of the loop, or changes, and they're like, what the heck happened?
I think one of the big things is now I don't really care about algorithm changes, to be honest.
Right.
But that's because I kind of figured out what they want. And once you kind of realize why they make changes to the algorithm, you can kind of figure out how to not worry about it. Yep. Which essentially is every algorithm change, for the most part, is to eliminate someone who's figured out a way to abuse the old algorithm.
Yeah.
Like people complain about the switch on Instagram from chronological to algorithmic feed. And people are like, oh, I want it chronological. But the problem that Instagram found with that is like, say hypothetically, I want you to always see a Just Sell Homes post. Well, I don't need a good post. I just need to post every 15 minutes.
Yes.
You will always see my content. Yeah, you'd probably unfollow me pretty quick, but I just, keep churning and getting a ton in. And that's what a lot of companies were doing,
Yeah.
spamming the feed. So they had to switch to that algorithm style just to get rid of that crap.
Yeah.
And yes, it came at the cost of some people prefer the chronological. But understanding that really Facebook and Google is really the two like considerations. I mean, I use Facebook as a stand-in for all social media. So social, what they want is for you to spend time on their platform, but enjoy that time on the platform. And now enjoyment can be a much like same as like providing value. Enjoyment is a form of value. Like it doesn't have to be like you have to physically give them something that provides them like monetary value. It could be a laugh is value.
Yep.
But they have to be on the platform and enjoy it. So does your content help them stay on the platform longer or help them enjoy the platform more?
Yep.
If your content doesn't do that, then algorithm changes will affect you. Like if you're trying to game the system and get around that, they will catch you and figure it out. And that's where you see a lot of big drops is when you like figured out some trick or hack that games the system. Yeah, they're going to close that. They're smarter than us.
Yeah.
It is. And then if you're like, okay, will what I'm putting here provide value to people and help them enjoy their time on here more? Then algorithm changes won't affect you that much. Most like, yes, there's exceptions there, but most of the time it won't be a problem. Yeah. Then the Google side, all Google cares about is providing the best answer to whatever you searched for.
Yeah.
So if that is like, if your post is what is a bully offer? Well, you better have the best answer to that. And if you do, they will show you more than anyone else.
Yeah.
And so like keyword stuffing is not the best answer. Trying to like hack in like random things in the right tags. Like, yes, those matter, but at the end of the day, it's the best content's going to win. So as long as you kind of keep that idea there of what's each platform's goal, how would my content help them accomplish it? They will help your content get seen more.
That's a great perspective on it to see it that way, because a lot of people view social media as just an advertising platform, and it's not. It's social media. You're supposed to be social. And I always use the example of would it pass the party test? If I walked up and handed someone my business card and said, "I'm Ryan," and walked away, like that wouldn't work at a party. Then it wouldn't work online. So you have to create content. You have to create something that's funny. You have to create engagement where people are going to want to stick around and enjoy what like you said, creating an enjoyable experience. If it's just shoving your message down someone's throat, they're not going to.
And it's a lot different now. Like if you remember back in like it feels a long time ago. Depends on the age of the person watching.
Yeah.
Like online dating when it first started, like Lav Life, people like they'd lie about how they met their spouse.
Yeah.
And be like, no, we met at a bar. And it was like actually on like Lava Life or something. That was how like Facebook friends and Twitter friends and Instagram friends were like 5 years ago. It'd be like, oh no, we like met at an event, but really you met on Facebook.
Yeah.
Now it's like a little more normalized. We're like, no, like you can make real friends online that you might have never actually met in person.
Yeah.
Like there's been times where like I've become friends with agents online and we end up at like a real estate conference. And then we actually have that like, have we actually met in person before?
Yeah.
And we haven't, like, we weren't sure. And I always find that funny of like us sitting there like, have we ever met in person?
Yeah.
But like, because we've talked so much and like maybe been on video calls and different things like that. We actually, like, I remember there was a recent one where neither of us had any idea if we'd met in person before. And we just both found that one really funny.
It's a good experience. That's what you want it to be, and that's what people want. So with farming, obviously there's some tremendous opportunities to digitally farm. And I've talked about this all the time, that farming, especially geographic farming, doesn't have to be postcards and door knocking. There's a ton of ways to hit people and to get in front of them. So when it comes to geographic farming, if you were to pick a strategy online, what would you say would be a good way for someone to start kind of getting in front of their audience in a specific geographic area?
I mean, so one, just on the point of like, if you're doing postcards now and you want to move online, just complement your postcards. So like take a photo or do a video of you holding up the postcard being like, hey guys, this is going to be in your mailbox the next few days. Right? Like you don't have to completely change your profile and your strategy to like a new thing. You can just take what you're doing offline and complement it online.
Yep.
Which I think a lot of people miss on the online thing is they don't think about like, what am I doing in the real world that I can complement with the online? If I was like start a brand new farm today, I mean, the first thing I would do is create a regular price report that goes out. So I don't know if you're familiar with Dean Jackson, but basically it'd be the Dean Jackson style price report that goes out.
Yep.
Depending on like turnover and stuff like that. I mean, I would probably want to do it weekly. And I would never do it less frequent than monthly.
Yep.
But basically, here's what's going on in the market and here's what it means. And I think that second part is what matters, is what it means.
Yep.
So like a great example would be like, hey, this home sold. Here's why it got so much.
Yep.
And maybe why your home might not, or why it could. Or here's this home that's a great deal that just came on the market. Here's why it's a good deal. And because like anyone can regurgitate the stats they're getting from their board or CREA or anything like that, but it's what that stat means for the individual person. And then I'd basically just market the hell out of that. Whether that was in person, online, I'd basically put it everywhere. And then the other one I do is a lot of hyper local content.
Yeah.
That type of content will change a little bit based on who my ideal client would be. Because like we have some clients who, you know, they want investors. So others are like, because even like farm in a neighborhood, like maybe it's an investor heavy neighborhood. Like if you look at Liberty Village, downtown Toronto, like that's a very much a more investment based.
Yep.
Whereas like if you're the suburbs up where I am, you're not getting the same amount of investors buying into a neighborhood.
Yeah.
And then even in there, like, are you targeting the moms? Are you targeting the dads? Are you targeting both? Are you targeting beer drinkers? Like, are you targeting CrossFitters? Like, yeah, I think of people like would be like, no, I'm targeting this neighborhood, and then that's it. Like, but no, you should really with your content niche down even further in there, because you're not turning those people away. You're just further attracting in your ideal clients in that neighborhood. And I think that's where a lot of people screw up that like hyper niching.
Yeah.
Is like, we had actually worked with this client for a little while on a consulting basis, where when she was working it, she realized she targeted moms, but that was too broad. Right. Because working moms loved her, stay-at-home moms not so much.
Yeah.
So when she switched to creating content for for working mothers specifically, that's when she started bringing a lot more of them in. But what it does, it creates fans who will then go out and talk when like maybe that stay-at-home mom posts in a mommy group, like, who do I know that could help with the real estate agent? All those working moms are going to go in and post and tag you.
Yeah.
So a lot of like that online work is not so much like specifically creating clients, it's creating people who will put your name out there for you.
And that's huge. And people miss that because they want to just create one message, and they just, let's face it, a lot of agents can be lazy, and they just like, I don't have the time to figure that out. But when you create that micro content, you're going to get more response, better people engaging. I had Matt Santagapita on. He's one of I think it was my second or third guest, and he was talking about separating your database into beer drinkers, dads, sports people. And then he said, now you can, if you got a best beers in town, you could hyper focus your database, send them a blog about the best beers in town, or someone who's into sports and say, here's the top 3 picks for this, like, and just really create micro content, which will create way more value and people will engage. Just like Facebook wants good content, your database wants good, enjoyable content for them.
And I don't think like there's a lot of mentality I find in the industry of like, if someone's not actively doing business with you, and I mean actively like willing to, not necessarily like, but like I know there was people when I sold that referred me a ton of business who would never use me because like their mother-in-law was an agent.
Right.
But if anyone ever asked for an agent, they'd use my name.
Yeah.
Because they liked me more. They wished they could use me. But I mean, it's their mother-in-law. They had to use her.
Yeah.
So sometimes like building those relationships with people who will never do business with you still works. So like if I went back to sales, the first thing I would do is look at like, okay, in that ideal client of mine, where are they? Where are they spending time? And then basically be like, okay, in those places where they're spending time, the things they're doing, who's like the local influencers for that? And then I just try and set up partnerships with them where we're promoting each other. So basically I can get in front of their audience. I'm offering them value. It's like similar in real estate, how I do a lot with like real estate coaches. Because I know like, for instance, a lot of people are going to spend on our like, you know, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 a month packages. They probably the type of people who would also hire a coach.
Right.
So if I target coaches, it helps us get in front of each other's audiences more.
Yeah.
I would do the exact same thing if I went to farm and neighborhood. I'd be like, is there a local mom and pop shop that everyone loves the owner and they're like these like local hyper celebrities?
Yeah.
Start making content with them. And then you get in front of them, people recognize them, and it brings them to you.
one of the things that I push that I've created, I call it scope. So it's the 5 strategies that you can reach people in your audience. So it's S is self-promotion, C is community, O is online, P is prospecting, and E is education. And when you start creating marketing around each of those avenues, you're hitting more people or the right people, and then you can layer them together. So you can do an educational piece that's doing some self-promotion, but also prospecting base. And when you find those mom and pops, you can start marrying and mixing together things and really hitting the audience in not just like a one pillar approach. And it's like when you put it together, you're going to have way more people engaging.
And it's really effective when you think of like how Facebook works. Like, all right, anyone who watches this video about this mom and pop shop, you can just now, instead of putting a call to action there, add a retargeting ad to anyone who watched it to then have your call to action, or then go to your content. Like, one of the biggest things I think a lot of like real estate gurus, or just like even non-real estate gurus, or whatever you call it now, they talk about know, like, and trust a lot.
Yeah.
But they say it like it's one word. Yeah. Know, like, and trust. Like they always say, you got to build know, like, and trust. But those are 3 distinct phases.
Yeah.
Like, first they have to know you, then they have to like you.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that we all know and like that we wouldn't trust with business.
That's true.
Right? Like, you can probably pinpoint a friend from high school that you're like, love the guy, but I wouldn't give him $50.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we all know someone like that. And that's here. Like, you can't, like, yes, like the perfect piece of content could do all 3 really quickly. It's possible.
Yeah.
But the odds are, like, I know with Over a Pint, which is my show that I often do, like, I know it'll get you to know who I am, because I generally, like, I looked at the numbers. We've reached 90,000 agents in Canada with the show. Like, our top show, I think, now is like 150,000 views. Wow. Like, I know we're getting in front of people.
Yeah.
But that's just enough to, like, if I go into a brokerage, generally there's at least someone who can be like, why do I recognize you?
Yeah.
Or like, you're the beer guy. But that doesn't mean that you're hiring me.
Yeah.
Then you got to actually watch it to get to like me, hopefully. Or if you don't, at least I don't have to worry about getting on a call with you. But the ones who like me, but like, you watching me drink with someone is not going to get you to trust me with your business.
Yeah.
It would be the, like, if I went back to sales, I would still do Over a Pint, but locally.
Yep.
With local businesses. But again, like, just watching me drink and have a fun conversation is not trust.
Yeah.
For some people it is, but like, I will retarget anyone who watches those shows now with things that build trust. And that's that next phase. And then people who watch that trust building piece will then see the, like, calls to action to do something with us.
Yeah, that's great. And again, like I said, a lot of agents do a 1 pillar approach, and they just do one shot and think, I'm going to blast my message out there. And it takes more than that in, especially with online, that people are seeing so much messages, so much stuff, that you have to hit them in different ways and different formats to gain that trust and to get them to like you, and not just, like I said, not just know you. For people who are thinking about doing it, I've seen a lot of agents struggle with coming up with actual content. So they've got an idea, but it's like, how do I actually create content? Do you have any tips for an agent who is thinking of, like, I've got some ideas, how do I get in front of them?
First, you got to get crystal clear on who your ideal client is. Even if that means creating like a fake person and be like, every piece of content I'm going to write to this person. But I mean, the type of content we always tell people is, first, think of your ideal client. What are the 10 most popular questions they have? Yeah. Maybe it's, what does a bully offer? Maybe it's, what's UFI? What's knob and tube? That depends on your client. Others, it could be about school districts. It could be about, like, do I need a garage, or is it fine not to, like, that varies a lot. But like, what are the 10 most popular questions? And the easiest way to think about it is, like, every time you're out with a client, if someone asks a question, write it down. Yeah. Because someone that asked you a question, 10 other people Googled it. Yeah. So then you can just type in and you become the search result. Then what you do is, what are the 10 questions those people who ask those questions should be asking, but don't know to ask? Yeah. So it might be like, cottages are a great example of this, is like, everyone who buys a cottage should know about roadshow allowances. It's very important. Yeah. But if you're not an agent who went through the courses or a cottage realtor, you probably don't even know what a roadshow allowance is. So you don't even know to ask about it. Yeah. That's a perfect example of, like, that type of content. So it's like, that right there is 20 pieces of content that in theory also are not time sensitive stuff. Right.
It's evergreen that you can use over and over.
If I went back to sales today, like, I would probably target families around my age. So young families just getting into, like, that school age stuff. Yeah. And I did this when I sold in-depth profiles on schools.
Yeah.
Like, and at this point I would go and interview the principal. I would kind of go through it all, like 1,500 word profiles on schools with a really simple call to action at the bottom of the post being like, do you want to search for homes in the school district? Click here.
Yeah.
Like, it's not an overly complicated thing. And the beauty of like schools, one, no one is trying to rank their school on search engines. Like, a school doesn't invest in SEO.
Yeah.
So, and no one else is really competing on that. So it's not that hard to be at least like, yeah, you might not outrank the school itself. You might, but you might not. But you could at least be number 2 pretty easily. And I think that's an important one. And then just looking at how could I take like a national story and apply it locally too. So like if you remember a few years ago, there's that like study that came out. I think it was either the Wall Street Journal or Forbes or somewhere like that, that it was homes within a half kilometer of a Starbucks on average are worth like 5% more than homes that aren't within half kilometers of Starbucks.
Yeah.
Which you're like, all right, that's interesting if you're reading it, but like now, okay, hey, I read this article. Does that hold true in my area?
Yeah.
So what are the home prices in Newmarket around the Starbucks here versus not? But then you can add in, you're like, is this because Starbucks raise home values, or do they just put their stores in areas where homes are worth more because their clients have more money?
Yeah.
But like that, if you were reading that first article, then you saw one about how does that hold true here? That's super interesting.
Yeah, and exactly, people are going to resonate with that, and whether you agree with it or not, whether it's right or not, they're going to go, "What is this? It's about my area," and that makes it personal to them and makes it interesting to them. Yeah. The thing about questions, I think, is awesome because when I had my old show, the Niche Agent, I interviewed Ian Watt. I don't know if you know Ian, so he's out in Vancouver, and Gary Vaynerchuk had him on it. Featured him on there, and he basically sells condos, and all he does is condos, and he became the condo person because he said, asking what questions are people asking about condos, and he started creating small little videos about what questions are asking, and his intention was not to become using for SEO. It was just, I'm going to shoot it once because people keep asking me. And then what happened was he kept creating this content, and then it just took off, and YouTube ranked it so high because he was answering the questions that people wanted to know. And then he just ran with it, and he had like so many views and just became the condo guy because he was answering questions.
Yeah. And that could be like as simple as include the information about like which condos allow pets.
Yeah.
Maybe people Google that and there's no good answer.
Yep.
But like, again, like, and even if you're not going to write it, but like every time someone asks you a question, go Google it and see what comes up. If there's not a perfect answer, create it. Like, it's not like, it sounds like I'm oversimplifying it, but it's not that complicated. Like,
so to that point then, I'm sorry. People are going to ask, where should we put in that content? Because I know some people, am I putting it on Facebook? Am I putting them on a blog? Like, what would you recommend as a resource for people to actually answer those questions?
Always on your website. I mean, you're going to then distribute it everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, you want it on Facebook, you want it on YouTube, you want it, I mean, Twitter, it's my favorite network, but I also know that no one's going to use it right most of the time. So that's a whole other discussion. But basically start it on your website and then promote it everywhere. Cause like you own your website, it's your hub, and you control it. Like I know people who say like, oh, I don't need a website, I have a Facebook page, but you don't own that.
Yeah.
And you could get kicked off Facebook tomorrow, and it might not even have been your fault. It could just be the algorithm screwed up and kicked you off for 30 days. Well, you have to send in your ID.
Yeah.
If that's your website, you just lost any business for the next 30 days.
I would also add, though, if you are using it on your website, make sure it's a website you own and not if you use a templated website. Because I made that mistake when I was in Durham, and I created a blog of things to do, and I created on a templated website. The company went out of business, and all that content, all that SEO, which was fantastic for me, was gone. So I switched to, I did a WordPress site. It's like, no matter what, I own that.
I mean, you can do it on one of those. I mean, you definitely want to be careful about which one you pick. Like, is it one that'll be around?
Yeah.
And then like, know that one day your goal should be to run your own site.
Yeah.
But definitely, like, I don't think necessarily you have to not pick one you don't own.
Yep.
Like, no, I owned from when I sold, I owned from the start. Like, my first website was $12 a year. Basically paid for the domain name and then put it free on Google Blogger. It was a pile of crap, but it got leads, and that's what mattered. Yes. But like, there's some templated sites work, but it also depends on your goal. Like, if you're just want an online brochure, go for it. Yeah. If you're going to create content, a lot of the templated sites are built for lead gen, not content marketing.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so like content marketing, you'd want to either go WordPress because then you can get an IDX in it. If you don't care about IDX, Squarespace is so easy to use, and they look nice that if you don't care about having an IDX feed on your website, I'd probably build one on Squarespace.
That's good to know. That's have to get people to check that out then. As far as then distributing the content, I find a lot of agents struggle with that part too. So like they can create the content and then they struggle with actually promoting it. What kind of tips would you give to someone to actually get it out there and get people to see it?
I mean, it obviously partially depends on the type of content they've created. Like a preference, even though I think video is overrated, is start with a video because you can then turn that into a lot of different contents. Like you can take the video, get it transcribed. There's a blog post, there's an email, but it could also be 4 emails. It could be 10 social media posts. Yeah. They all link back to that original bigger piece. You can also rip the audio out and turn it into a podcast on top. Then it's a YouTube show. And like, then even the video, you can cut that into like 5-10 minute segments of the hour-long show type of thing. Like you can keep repurposing that content throughout your different things. I think a big mistake almost everyone makes is they don't email enough.
Yes.
People should email more. That's why one of my favorite Dean Jackson lines is only send emails on days you want to make money. It works.
It's true. I had Chuck Charlton on, who's a big fan of Dean too, and one of his proteges. And we talked about that, about sending more content more often. You're going to get more people who are actually interested and engaged. And instead of less where people think, well, I don't want to offend anyone, or I don't want to have anyone unsubscribe. The people that will stay on there are that much more fans and are that much more engaged.
I am 100% okay with unsubscribes, and every now and then I will encourage unsubscribes. Like once in a while, I'll like send out a newsletter where I move the unsubscribe thing to the first thing you see.
That's good.
But I like, and even then, like people take unsubscribes personally sometimes. Like sometimes you're just cleaning up your inbox. Like I've unsubscribed from email lists that I've then went on to buy from. I just didn't need their, coupons in my mailbox or their pumpkin pie recipe.
Yeah.
But if it was like, there's still some, like I have one now that I actually probably get 6 newsletters, 6 to 7 a week from them. And I read them all.
Yeah.
Like they're just really good content. Yeah. But that's what they do, is they just provide really, really good things. They're crystal clear on what the value is out of it. And then they don't abuse that. So there's no like extra stuff they send sales. So like, this is one thing I love that Chuck does. We've worked with him quite a bit on building a subscriber list for this, is if you sign up for his mailing list, like his Milton Daily Homes, it's very clear, like you're signing up for Milton Daily Homes. Yeah. You're not signing up for anything else.
Yeah.
Like he's not sending you other emails.
Yeah.
So it's a very permission-based thing. Yeah. Someone who unsubscribes from that is okay. They're just cleaning up their inbox so that it's not that they're not going to use Chuck later on. Yeah. So I like, to a degree, almost should be happy with unsubscribes, because it's just one closer to someone who will work with you.
And going back to that point about having that hyper focused ideal client, when you have that person in mind and you have those people on your list, it's so much easier to create the content that they want. And trying to send one message to a bunch of different types of people, they're not all going to resonate with a working, like you said, even just between a working mom and a stay-at-home mom. So it allows you to create more engaging fans who want to get that when you know who that is that you're kind of reaching out to.
Yeah. I know what kind of stops a lot of people from like niching down that hard is they're worried about like, no, I'll work with anyone and I don't want to turn people off. Well, you're not turning them off. You're attracting people even more who will then be those fans, be those advocates out there for you. Like you can tell which Facebook groups I operate in more than others, because if someone talks about Facebook ads, there's a few groups where I'll get tagged a lot. Yeah. And there's just as many where people won't even say my name. Yeah. Right. Like so you can tell which ones I've spent the time to build some level of community in.
And that goes back to the basis of a farm in itself. Even if you're not going to hyper local demographics within the farm, just being the farm specialist and knowing that neighborhood by providing local content, by connecting with the mom and pop shops, people are going to resonate with you versus trying to be all things. One of the things I can't stand is you see agents with their website and it's got, I work in Scarborough, Newmarket, Aurora, Toronto, all the way to Hamilton. Like, it's like you can't service that many clients in those areas. So it's people would rather work with someone who knows their area like the back of their hand and can resonate with them.
I remember when I sold a client of mine, I was helping him find a place in Newmarket at the time. His mom lived in Thunder Bay. they tried to convince me that I should list her home in Thunder Bay. They would cover the cost of flights for the couple times I might have to come up there.
Yeah.
They really wanted me to list their Thunder Bay home. I was like, there is not a chance I would ever list your Thunder Bay house from Newmarket. For people watching who don't know, that's about a 15-hour drive. Like, that's not an insignificant distance.
Yeah. And most people know what the significance of that. And there are agents who will work all over, but most people know if you become the specialist in the area, it's like, that's what they do. They're specialized in that. But on the flip side, I always tell people, don't limit yourself completely, because I've seen some people where they say, no, all their marketing is that you can have two separate brands. You can have your generic brand and then have your farm brand, and then say powered by or brought to you by, or I also work in outside of that area as well.
Like, I specialized in, like, when I sold, I didn't pick like a geographic farm. I went and just hard on first-time home buyers in Aurora. And I had a few people who were like, okay, but do you work with sellers? Like, they were like worried I might not be able to do the job for them.
Yeah.
But they asked.
Yeah.
And it led to a lot of business. I had to do things to encourage those conversations, certainly. But I also got way more first-time home buyers because I was so like hard on that idea of, if you're a first-time home buyer, I'm the guy to help you.
Yeah.
And at least at that time, no one else in the town was focusing on that niche because everyone wanted listings. And I was like, well, I'm going to be around for a while, not knowing I'd be out, stop selling in 2 years. Be like, well, they're going to sell that home, and then they'll list with me, and then they'll just move up with them throughout the career. But I focus on that first-time buyer, first-time seller segment instead of like a specific neighborhood.
Yeah, makes sense. So if you were to get started and you were giving advice to agents for a geographic farm, and you were trying to give them, what 3 strategies or 3 techniques would you give to say, if you're going to go gangbusters on that neighborhood, what would you suggest?
Definitely do the price report for it. So figure out and make that price report as specific as possible. So if it's like, don't do like the Aurora price report, do like this specific neighborhood name price report.
Yeah.
And then everywhere that I go, that would be something you could sign up for. So it'd be an email signature. It'd be on the website. When I have an open house, it'd be like a checkbox on the sign-in thing if you want to sign up for it. If you're a lead who's giving me the end around, instead of trying to sell you, I'll ask you to join the list. I would, and then I'd promote the list directly too. That'd be option 1. Then I would look at who has influence in that area and what can I do with them to get in front of people with them. A lot of the times that's like Facebook groups, local businesses that might be in the area. Basically the schools, see how I could leverage that, perhaps any sports teams in the area. But basically there would be a lot of, I think with especially geographic farms, there has to be a lot of like offline stuff happening.
Yeah.
And then I would basically pound it with Facebook ads. A lot of different kinds. So like anytime I'm at an event in person, that event, if you open your phone, you're going to see my ad. And that ad is basically, if you see me, come talk to me about real estate.
Yeah.
Like when I used to sell, I've told this story a lot. I used to coach basketball, and I didn't want to be that like annoying coach who was like, oh, by the way, I also sell real estate if you're interested. So what I did is I ran Facebook ads to the gym while I coached with my face. And at the time I was with Remax. So it was basically my face and then a giant Remax balloon. And that was the entire ad. Yeah. Like I actually specifically set it up so you didn't click on it because I didn't want you to click on it. It cost me money. But what that happens is timeouts, or just parents actually don't often watch the game. They'd be on their phone and they'd see me and they'd come up to me after the game and be like, funny coincidence, I just saw on Facebook that you're in real estate. We're thinking of selling.
Yeah.
And it led to so much conversation with like parents of my players who already trusted me because they saw me coaching their kids. So they knew I was at least somewhat competent and somewhat responsible. And then when they started seeing those ads, and it just starts those conversations, but it's because I was there.
Yeah.
So I would do that, like any event coming up, I would hit that hard. When I door knocked, that's what I started doing. That's how I got, like, any listing appointments I ever got from door knocking came from once I added in the piece about running an ad with my face on it. I remember one specifically, like they told me no, like basically go away at the door. and then messaged my Facebook ad that night saying, hey, you were actually at my door today. We are thinking of moving. Would you mind coming back tomorrow night when my husband's home?
That's awesome.
And talk to us about selling. Like,
so how long would you run that ad for then from the time you were door knocking?
I
Or
would normally do the 3 days up to when I was knocking in the area, the length of it, and then probably like 14 days after.
That's awesome.
And it depends. Now, if it's my farm, I would always have stuff running because now it depends on the size of the farm, but most of the time, like a farm's not big from a Facebook audience standpoint.
Yeah.
So, like, you could run a pretty consistent, like essentially a better version of a bus bench ad or a bus shelter ad for like $3 a day.
Yeah.
And it's one that instead of like looking at and having to like remember the phone number as they're driving by, they just click on the ad.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it works well if you do it, but like you said, it's the consistency doing it. And you can't run an ad once. You can't go door knock and run the ad once. It's that constant state of remembering you because you're seeing it all the time and not just, I'd rather see people spend $5, like you said, $3 or $4 a day versus $300 in one day and then call it quits.
And it's similar though, like, and farming, like it takes 6 months plus to like get consistent results. Like, yes, there are ads that'll get you leads today. Like I could put up an ad today and it's 4:18 p.m. right now. I could put up an ad right now that I could have leads in by dinner time.
Yeah.
But if I want to like consistent, predictable results of like quality leads too, that's also even with paid ads and branding and content is going to be like farming a neighborhood. Like good content marketing online takes as long as farming a neighborhood most of the time.
Yeah.
Yes, you can get a piece that goes like locally viral or something that blows up, but that's the exception usually.
The consistency, you just got to keep doing it and keep getting your message out there.
Hit that tipping point. And like, that's what I noticed. Like when I was blogging 3 to 5 times a week is I blogged 3 to 5 times a week for 6 months without a single lead coming in.
Wow.
And then like month 7, I got like 1 lead. Then it was 2, but then it was 5. And then it was every single post, 1 to 3 leads came out of it.
Yeah.
Like it kind of hit that point where I started ranking high on Google. I started getting up there for everything.
Yeah.
People started sharing it because I was tagging a ton of local businesses. I remember there was one there was at the farmer's market in Aurora. I had this running joke in mind and I mainly made it because it was my buddy's bakery. But he made the best butter tarts I've ever had. So every Friday blog post, I incorporated a joke about, it's almost time for my farmer's market butter tart from Nutmeg.
Yeah.
I kept bringing that up to the point that he's like, dude, do you know how many times people come up here every day being like, yeah, I read about your butter tarts in this real estate agent's blog post.
Yeah.
So I had to try one because he talks about it so much. Like it's one of the things that was actually before I ever got like a real lead from it was someone, when I knew it was like getting traction, was when he would give me that feedback of, I had 3 people today who came to buy a butter tart because you blogged about us.
Yeah. And they may not be reaching out to you directly, but they are reading it.
But they're reading, they're coming back. And like to know that I made that joke so much means they were coming back. So it worked out really, really well for me. Because eventually like my most popular lead generating post is when I started doing the featured home of the week.
Okay.
But I specifically, not that I had a ton of listings early on, featured other people's listings. I focused a lot on out-of-town agents. So like everyone who lists from out of town, because I could always outrank them locally very quickly. Because I'd always say like, I'll put your name and brokerage right in the post. But my goal was to outrank you for your name with that. But every time I did it, I also got a couple leads out of it because people would be interested. But then I also went to like local agents who were bigger, and I only ever got told no once. But I started actually outranked a couple agents for their own name because I had them on my blog post and my website was better.
That's funny. And it's that consistency, and like you said, you spent a few months to get it going, and just like a farm in general, it's like you don't just farm it once or for a month or 2 months. You got to keep putting the time in, and then there's that tipping point where once people see it, I say the same thing with when it comes to mind share. Usually, it takes to about 8 to 10% of deals in the area before people say you sell everything. And it's like, no, you sell 1 out of 10, but because they see your name on all the signs, they see your name with all the marketing, then people start seeing you as the expert. But it takes that consistency to get to that point. And once it happens, it's like a switch goes off and people just see your stuff and resonate with you.
I think one that actually speeds up results a lot, that a lot of people are even scared to do, is adding real personality to your content.
Yeah.
Like like the example I was giving, like I constantly talked about butter tarts in real estate blog posts. Like that has nothing to do with it, but it added, like, you get to know me a little bit. Like, you know that I love blog posts, or I make a Raptors reference, or, you know, I show over a pint. I know, like, you know, right away, I like beer. Like even little things like, okay, you know, I like Dumb and Dumber and Batman. Like it's very quick to tell, and I can add personality into what I'm doing. Like kind of a lot of my goal with my marketing, from my show to like blog posts, all right, emails I send, is I want you to read it or watch it. And then when you meet me in person, it's the same person.
Yeah.
Like there's no inconsistency there. So like if I'm making a joke online, if that joke turns you off, well, it's going to turn you off when we're in person too. So I'd rather get that out of the way now.
Exactly.
So like put in your personality. If you have humor, put it in. Like, yeah, there's always a line you don't want to cross. But I'd rather come closer to the line and maybe once in a while put like a toe over than never coming close to it. But then your content's dull and no one cares. Like the first piece of content I ever created was, what is the difference between a customer and a client? And I basically just regurgitated the AREA textbook. Like that is some garbage content. Nobody cares about it. Like the only good thing that ever came out of that was it generated my first troll online. Like 6 months later, and a guy came back. I think I was talking about like the loyalty and something from a client versus, like, I can't remember the exact term, whatever's literally in the textbook. And some guy commented like, yeah, honesty and loyalty from a used house salesman. I was like, oh, I'm so excited. I responded with like a really excited, like, oh my God, I got my first troll. I made it. But I had a lot of fun with that one. But like, if you, like, I don't know if you're in the Wheelhouse, the group that I have. Yeah. If you saw, like, it was over a year ago now, like I posted the first video I ever made for YouTube, and like, it's bad. Like it's really, really bad. So like, don't be afraid to put out bad content at the beginning. It gets better. Like I used to be just atrocious on video. My writing wasn't good. Like if you knew me in high school, like no one would ever believe that I would write anything. Or like I used to take zeros in school if I had to present to anybody. Like I would rather take the zero and sit in the back and fail than actually get in front of anyone. I mean, little different now. But like you just start with bad content if you have to. As long as it's like accurate, it's okay to not be like that good. And then slowly start like adding more into it and adding more into it. But I also think it's really important to like stay on top of like the pop culture in your area. I mean, a lot of the times that's what pop culture is everywhere. So like when Game of Thrones was big, so like I remember I was selling during season 1 of Game of Thrones. And so a really popular blog post is what you can learn about buying real estate from Tyrion Lannister. And awesome. I would just take 8 Tyrion Lannister jokes or like famous lines from the show, and then like make up a real estate lessons from like his quote. That's awesome. And I actually got that idea. So at the time, my favorite writer was a guy named Bill Simmons, who is a sports writer, or used to be a sports writer. He basically stopped doing that altogether now. So he owns theringer.com. Okay. Which recently sold to Spotify for like $200 million. But he originally just started as a blogger. And he started doing like that. And I started like, I found myself captivated by his sports content. And I was like, okay, but what is it that's keeping me here? And it was like his culture references and like how he brought personality into the post, and it wasn't just like a dry analysis of a game. Like he made fun comparisons and conspiracy theory. Like he had a ton of fun with it. And I was like, okay, I can take that and adapt it to real estate. So like if you find yourself online loving a piece of content, stop and think, what did I like about this? How can I adapt that to my own? Like my own show Over a Pint is a combination of comedians in cars getting coffee and then the Hot Ones show on YouTube.
Both are awesome.
Like that was my own. Like I like both of those things, but I can't copy either one. But I want to do that. Like with Hot Ones specifically, it was like, I love my favorite part of that. Like, yes, it's fun to watch them suffer, but that's actually not what makes the show good. What makes it good is when they're suffering, they let their guard down and have an honest conversation. So I was like, what can I do to get an honest conversation out of someone that's not hot food? So I settle on alcohol.
That's even easier usually.
And it works most of the time. I've developed some other tricks to get people's guard down, but the alcohol does help a lot.
So if anyone wants to start their own drinking show in their neighborhood, that's a great way to get people engaged.
Just don't call it over a pint. We're good.
Exactly. Well, you've provided a ton of great content here and great ideas for people. I really appreciate this because, again, a lot of agents struggle with coming up with the ideas, and you've got some real great ideas that I think people can adapt in their own way and really make it their own. And I think that's really the key part of it, is creating the content, but putting their own spin on it and putting their personality to it. So that was great. One of the things that we share each week is your best book. So what's a great book that you would suggest our viewers check out?
Well, I am kind of writing one. It might just turn into a really blog post, so I can't promote that yet. But I would say right now, I'm really liking Never Lose a Customer Again by Joey Coleman. He actually had him recently on my show too, but I only got him on because I wanted to talk to him because I loved his book. But it's a great book, really well done. It's basically really on that like excellent customer service topic, which I think if you have a farm is incredibly important, and delivering that kind of service to people because that's what they remember. They talk about it with their neighbors. So I'd definitely check out Joey Coleman, get his book, Never Lose a Customer Again. Right now, though, I'm reading The Alter Ego by Todd Herman.
Okay. I haven't heard of that one, but the first one I have.
It's interesting. It's very, it's this idea of, I don't know, did you ever play sports much? Or?
I played basketball in high school, but then I stopped growing and everyone out.
Yeah, that was actually my problem. I stopped growing at 6 feet and I was like, we're done. But think of like sometimes you get on a court and it's like who you are as a person on the court is different than who you are off the court.
Yeah.
So the whole idea is like, that's your alter ego on the court.
Yeah. And
he's very intentional about and I'm only like 100 pages into the book right now, but it's like every field of play that you have, whether it's business, parenting, relationships, stuff like that, like you should have your alter ego for each one of those that fits that. But like, he's like, be very intentional about like create that alter ego. Like,
yeah,
and he is interesting. I actually was having a conversation with him at a conference. I ended up meeting him one time, and he's actually doing a study with a big hospital in the US about how kids who wear like a Batman costume undergoing chemo have a better outcome, like on average, than kids who don't.
Wow.
And it's because like it changes their mindset to be like, I'm Batman.
Yeah, I can do this.
And it's that same idea. Like when you come up and show up to your show, like who's your favorite host? If you like channel them as like, I'm going to show up as X person, then that will help you perform better while doing it. So it's like, I'm finished yet, but it's super interesting.
We'll put both those books in the notes so people can check that out. And if anyone wants to find out what you're up to and how they can connect to you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
JustSellHomes.com. You can learn basically everything you want about us. You can add me on Facebook. We have some Facebook groups you can join called The Wheelhouse. And you can also add me, or if you just want to chat on the phone, pick my brain, anything like that, bookandrew.ca. Go straight into my Calendly account, which allows you to book a call. And there's different options. Like if you want me to review your Facebook ads, you want me just to literally just pick my brain. Just don't book that like every day. But if you want to pick my brain once in a while, that's fine. And then there's also an option there for a sales call if you want to talk about hiring.
Awesome. And the Over the Pint we'll throw in there as well so people can check that out. Yeah. Are you still doing the videos then?
Yes. I mean, right now I'm doing this challenge where I can't drink.
Okay.
Which does complicate the show over alcohol. So I have one more filmed episode with Chris Smith.
Okay.
That'll
awesome.
be coming out probably not next week because that's Thanksgiving. So probably the week after that. But yeah, so that one's coming out. And I don't have any more filmed after that. I got to figure out if I want to go the like non-alcoholic route or just put the show on pause till like, I'm debating just putting it on pause till 2021 right now. I got a lot going on with stuff. So
we'll throw it in there that people can check out because even the past episodes are awesome. You've done some really great interviews. So those are awesome. Well, appreciate you being on the show. Again, you provided a ton of great information and I know people will be really inspired by some of the stuff you mentioned, and thanks for being a guest. It's been awesome.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks for checking out today's episode. If you'd like more videos like this, be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out our Facebook page and our other social media channels. Looking forward to bringing you more great content like this, and happy farming.